I'm walking through the Reformation series that Desiring God put together to give you a fuller history of Christianity. Join me.
You know, we all love a good hero story, right? A tale of one courageous person standing against the odds, all for a revolutionary idea. These stories are just so powerful, so simple, and they really stick with us. But today, we're going to look at one of these stories and see what happens when we start to peel back the layers. All right, so our story begins with a man who's often celebrated in Protestant circles as a real pioneer. His name is Thomas Becon, and he's sometimes given this really fascinating title, the Monday Morning Protestant. And this is the heart of it all. This is the core idea that makes his story so powerful. He's held up as the guy who took faith out of the church and brought it right into the workplace. He's the one who said the work of everyday people is a holy calling, and that is an undeniably powerful message. So, first up, let's just lay out the popular narrative, the hero's story that you'll often hear. And it's a dramatic one. I mean, it's full of these incredible highs and lows that just perfectly fit the mold of a Reformation hero. Wow, I mean, just look at this timeline. It really paints a picture, doesn't it? Under King Henry VIII, he gets arrested and has to write in secret. Then, for a minute, he's a royal chaplain under King Edward. But then, boom, he's forced into exile under Queen Mary. And finally, he makes this triumphant return with Queen Elizabeth. It's a total roller coaster, a life completely defined by conviction and persecution. And this is the big idea he's known for. This is the heart of his legacy. The claim is that he was the one who introduced this really revolutionary idea that your job, whether you're a baker or a blacksmith, is a sacred act of worship, just as important as what a priest does on Sunday. It's a fantastic story, a really fantastic story. But you know how it is with popular history. The most interesting parts are usually hiding just beneath the surface. So let's take a closer look. So we've got to ask the big question, is this the whole story? Well, when you start to dig into the academic analysis, the work that compares this story to the broader historical record, you get a much more nuanced and, honestly, a much more interesting view of Thomas Becon and his ideas. Okay, so this table breaks it down perfectly. The big events of his life, his arrest, his exile, totally accurate. The man absolutely went through a lot. His role as this hidden forest reformer, well, that's a little bit romanticized. He was definitely influential, but more as a writer, a pamphleteer. But it's that last point, the big one, his whole legacy is built on. That's where the story gets really misleading. So let's really dig into that. Let's focus on that central, most misleading claim, the idea that seeing your work as an act of worship was some brand new Protestant innovation. The story usually goes something like this. Before the Reformation, the church only cared about the sacred work of priests and monks. The secular work that everybody else did, that was seen as less holy, less important. And then, in comes Thomas Becon, and he changes everything. But then you see something like this. This quote is from the Rule of St. Benedict, written way back around the year 516. That's a full 1,000 years before Thomas Becon was even born. And it says, monks are truly monks when they live by the labor of their hands. That shows a deep, foundational respect for manual work as a spiritual practice, 1,000 years earlier. In fact, this idea was so important it had a name, ora et labora. That's Latin for pray and work. This wasn't some minor footnote. It was the actual motto for a massive monastic tradition that shaped European culture for centuries. It explicitly taught that labor was a path to holiness. And when you put them side by side like this, the point becomes crystal clear. Becon's teaching looks a lot less like a shocking, brand new innovation and a lot more like a powerful restatement, an echo of an idea that had been a core part of Christian thought for a very, very long time. And this isn't the only piece of context this simple story leaves out. It often overlooks the fact that Becon's view on sola scriptura, scripture alone, was his truly radical break from the past. And the story also tends to overstate his influence a bit. I mean, his pamphlets were popular for sure, but he wasn't a main architect of doctrine like some of his contemporaries were. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, so what? We've poked a few holes in a simple story, we've added some complexity, but why does any of this actually matter? Why not just let the simple hero story stand? And look, the point here is absolutely not to tear down Thomas Becon. His life was remarkable, his writings were important. The real goal is to understand how we tell stories about the past. It's about seeing that ideas often have these deep roots, that they're part of a long, continuous conversation, not just these sudden breakthroughs out of nowhere. The story of Becon uses a pretty common device we could call the innovation trope. It's a storytelling trick, really. You make an idea seem way more radical and a person more heroic by just erasing everything that came before. It makes for a great story, but it's not always great history. So, by looking for the full picture, with all its messy nuance, we don't actually lose the hero, we gain something so much better. A richer, deeper understanding of their world and how their ideas connect to a past that's far deeper than we often imagine. And that leaves us with a final question to really think about. If we apply this same lens not just to Thomas Becon, but to all the other hero stories we've learned, what else might we discover? What incredible connections and deeper truths are waiting for us just beneath the surface of the simple stories we think we already know?